Hello, all masters. Welcome to the Science of Happiness series. We had two sessions last week, and we have come to the third session. Nikhil sir and Jenny ma'am have gone through so many details about the science of happiness. And yes, masters, it's time for us to choose whether we need to be special or we need to be happy. They have gone through so many details, so much information about happiness. It's not that we just get it. It's we need to practice it, like how we do exercise and build our muscles. We need to build our happiness muscle. And yeah, we all have our useless friends. Yeah, and we all useless friends have gathered today for the third session of the science of happiness. I heartily welcome Nikhil sir and Jenny ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gangadhar, and thank you so much to everybody who has joined us again for this third part series of the Science of Happiness. Um, just before we continue, I just wanted to check our audio and video is all coming through fine?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, perfect. So let's just get our screen sharing again and then
Yeah, we can see the screen as well. Thank you.
perfect. So welcoming everybody back to the third part of the Science of Happiness. We've just covered a lot in these last two sessions, and this third one is going to be wrapping up this segment that Jenny and I are so fortunate to be sharing with you all. It doesn't mean it's the end of everything, but it's the end of this little, or putting a little bow on talking about the principles of happiness that are universal, irrespective of what your faith is, irrespective of what your stage of life, age, geography, and hopefully, you guys will really enjoy this last chapter. It's one that I think is really close to my heart, and I think, as Jenny mentioned in the first session, is almost one of the most important ingredients in the overall happiness equation that we talked about. So just for those new joiners we have, just wanted to quickly reintroduce myself and Jenny here. Myself and Jenny really were interested in tackling this topic on the science of happiness from an angle a little bit different to how many of us may have heard it before. Uh, like we've said in the very first session, almost nothing that we're sharing in these sessions is particularly groundbreaking. Most of these things you would have heard, many of us in the Beyond Your Mind Foundation would have actually taught a lot of these things. But what we're hoping that we could really bring, and we're hoping that all the people here really gained, is revisiting these core principles of happiness and really understanding why we do these things. We're told to do these things. Why is it? And that's so we can help ourselves really understand that and improve our own practice, but also so we can be better teachers and communicate that to other people in the world who may not be able to understand it in more esoteric terms and just want to kind of break down, why should I stop my busy life when I have 100 other things going on and listen to the thing that you're trying to tell me? And sharing a little bit about us for the people who kind of joined. Both Jenny and I have gone through kind of all the ups and downs of the material world. We're both at the Harvard Business School. I come from an investing background. My partner Jenny here has been at the forefront of the global consumer market, working with the global CEO of Adidas. And we have really lived the ups and downs of what it means to live. Like it's not just going into a cave. It is having work pressures. It is having relationships. It is having social pressures, financial pressures, expectations, ambitions. Almost everybody listening to this, irrespective of your age, probably has those challenges. And I've really experienced this throughout my life, where it's like everybody wants to be happy. If you ask somebody, do you want to be happy? Everybody's going to say, I want to be happy. But when we actually look at how we live our lives, we don't live our lives in a way that scientifically says that we're going to be happy. And there's this big, big disconnect between what we want and what we actually do. And Jenny and I thought that sharing some of these principles that we were very fortunate to learn in our own practice, bringing together a lot of the leading science from one of our professors, Arthur Brooks at Harvard Business School and the Harvard Kennedy School, and also bringing in our real life experiences into this would make this quite grounding. So as we kick this in, we just want to give another thank you to our professor, Arthur Brooks, who has curated most of the content that we've been talking about in these sessions. And again, like we've mentioned in previous sessions, if you're really interested in diving in and wanting to know what, the actual journals are and what are the publications in this space, I highly recommend you go to his website, and he has so much free knowledge in this that makes it so accessible, whether it's you want to learn for yourself or you want to help share that with your partner, your kids, your parents, your colleagues, whoever that may be. So thank you again. You want to take us through our first topic that we covered in this session?
Sure. So we so far had two sessions. The first one was mainly about happiness and unhappiness and managing and understanding your own emotions. And just the key takeaways, because it's always good to reinforce. So we learned that happiness doesn't come on its own, no matter how successful you are, because it is a conscious effort. And we learn about the macronutrients of happiness. The main building blocks, the constant happiness, are enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. And we asked you to think about where you need to make the biggest improvements for your own happiness. And today we talk a little bit more about meaning, which is supposedly the most important macronutrient of happiness. We learned that the goal is not to eliminate our negative emotions, if you were to label it in that way, and eradicate suffering, but managing your emotions through metacognition. So think about the dials versus switches. The goal is not to switch off your emotions. The goal is to have a firm control on your dials. And metacognition is meditation, journaling, prayer that just help you to manage your emotions, and in a more biological phrasing, to give yourself time for your prefrontal cortex, which is part of your brain that is slower to respond, to catch up to your limbic system, where all your emotions are produced and controlled. And if you want to be successful pursuing your happiness, then treat happiness as the most important endeavor in your life. You're the CEO of your own life, and you're in control. So think and breathe happiness, and teach it to other people around you, because that will make yourself happier, just as we both are doing right now. And then flipping over to the second session we talked about love and relationships. So that was about family, that was about romantic relationships, and then also lastly about worldly rewards. We touched upon, again, the 4 pillars of happiness are faith, family, friends, and meaningful work and relationships. So really it's about connecting with people, and it's also part of the enjoyment piece of happiness. So we talked about passionate versus companionate love. That companionate love brings long-term happiness, versus passionate love is just the ups and downs of emotions. What we really should seek is the companionate love. When you look for your partner, then look for complementarity, not just compatibility. Look for differences. That just makes it more exciting, and success rate higher for a successful relationship. We talked about that we have a loneliness crisis right now, that loneliness is a major health risk, and it's worsened by remote work and social media overuse, where you don't even interact with people anymore. We also talked about friendship. We talked about the useless friends, meaning do you have enough friends that you're friends without any reason? There's no objective behind. There's no virtue that aspire that friendship, and once the virtue goes away, that friendship also goes away.
I think a lot of people really loved that useless friends concept. I got so many messages from people really resonating with, I'm going back and counting all the useless friends that I have, or I'm so fortunate to have. So I'm glad that really concept resonated with all of you.
And these are the deep and meaningful friendships, which are so key to well-being. And ultimately, we also talked that marriage is based on, you know, a deep friendship when you view your spouse as your friend, as your companion. And then going to the world of rewards piece of that session, we talked about the happiness traps, which are money, status, and success. We said that money alleviates unhappiness, but it doesn't increase long-term happiness beyond a point. There's a lot of struggle about social comparison and prestige seeking that decreases happiness. And the fear of failure, we talked about the gold medal curse and success addiction, which also leads to a lot of dissatisfaction. And then Nikhil posed a question in the last part, whether you want to be special or you want to be happy. And with this, we are now leading over to the last part, which...
Just before we transition, for again any of the new joiners we have, I really want to touch on the happiness trap, which is a conversation that always comes up when anybody talks about happiness, because the default is to say, hey, money is not going to bring you happiness. And I think that's why a lot of people I've experienced are almost immediately shut off to the idea of, well, okay, I don't buy that because I need money in my life. And this is where I think it's so important to understand what is being said. And sometimes I think people kind of say it in a way that makes it hard to receive, but it's not that money isn't important. Everything has a role. Everything in this creation has a role. Money is important. Money, as Jenny mentioned, alleviates the unhappiness factors of not having food, not having shelter, stress, whatever it may be. But it's recognizing that it can't give you that additional happiness. It can alleviate, but being aware, that's where I don't fall into the trap where I'm like, okay, I've now alleviated my, I have a roof over my head, I can travel, I have healthcare, I've alleviated my unhappiness. Why do I continue to accumulate for the sake of accumulating? What you should be doing is going to those macronutrients that Jenny said and going, if I'm seeking happiness and you already have a minimum level of financial security, increasing that by itself won't do anything. And what you need to do is go back to those macronutrients. With that, we bring in today's topic. Here we are. So today's topic is all about the deep dive into meaning and purpose, and we'll finish with some science-based practices in terms of building an overall happiness plan for life. So in life, Professor actually kind of broke it down saying there are two types of problems that we will often face in your life, and he called them complicated problems versus complex problems. So complicated problems, as he says here, can be hard, but have specific answers. So this is, here is a calculus problem. For somebody who's never studied calculus, that looks difficult, but if you follow a very structured, methodical path, you definitely will get to the answer. It's just a case of learning how to do it and putting in the work. Same thing with technology, sciences. This is the type of problems that all of us high achievers have excelled at solving. Complicated problems where that's where you get paid a lot as well. It's these problems where it's just like, if you put in the work, I'm going to get to a very specific, definitive answer. It requires a particular type of thinking in terms of hemisphere that we'll talk about later as well. On the other hand, we have a very different type of problem, which is complex, is how they're referred to, which is these are actually very, very simple problems. It's not like, here's this big whiteboard with all these calculus, how do you get to it? It's simple like, how do I be happy? What is love? What is my purpose in life? The question itself is a very, very, very simple question, but the answer is not obvious. It is not clear. It's not something that if you walk down this particular path, you don't know if you will necessarily find it. And that distinction, we're going to keep revisiting, but just to allude to it, what we end up finding is we easily get drawn into the top one. And it's so easy for us to put our time and energy solving those top problems because we know there will be a gratification at the end. what we don't do enough is enough on solving the latter of the problems. And often we don't know how, we don't know where to begin. But the latter is actually one of the greatest determinants of meaning and purpose, which, as we talked about, turns out to be one of the biggest sources of overall happiness. So why do we care about any of this? Why is this important to all of these people listening? Let's just start with some basic context. Young adults today are experiencing depression at rates higher than ever before. This is something that we talked about at our first session, there are a number of reasons for why this is happening. A lot of people attribute it to technology. A lot of people put it to the increased comparison. 50 years ago, if you lived in a small village, you literally could only compare yourself to the people within physical proximity. Whereas now, thanks to the internet, globalization, whatever it is, each person is comparing them to every single person on earth. And that is incredibly overwhelming, especially for young adults who are still forming their sense of self, but even for fully grown adults who I know men and women who find themselves really insecure, and men or women finding themselves that I'm not good enough in my career because I'm not just comparing myself around this group of 10 people in my village, I'm comparing myself to the 8 billion people in the world. People have body image problems because then in the past, they was just like, oh yeah, my body just looks like everybody else's body in my town. Now you're on Instagram, you're seeing like fitness models who do nothing but work on themselves, Photoshop, strict diets, drugs, etc. And you're like, oh my God, my body's not as good as that person. And all these factors are leading to absolutely increased rates of unhappiness, and depression is exactly that. You do not feel happiness. You are at your lowest. But a big part of that as well is not just the technology and the comparisons. It is the absolute loss of meaning. We talked about this very briefly in the first session, but as people kind of came into the world 50 years ago or even longer, you kind of knew your place. You knew what it is that you were doing. I'm going to touch on that just in a second. So here we're seeing that the number of people who actually think that life actually seems meaningless is going up astronomically. And if we look at this interesting study, which actually looks at first-year college students over multiple decades, for those who might not be able to see it there, you have a blue dotted line that's going down. What that actually shows is back in the 1960s, more than 90% of first-year college students said that they went to college with the intention to develop a meaningful philosophy of life. Isn't that just such a beautiful concept that you have young adults who said the reason why I'm pursuing higher education, the reason why I'm spending my time, whatever it is that I'm doing with my life, is to find meaning with such intentionality. Now, that's less than 50%. At the same time, you've seen the other drivers of why people are doing things to go through the roof. So these are the green line and the purple line there, you've seen increasing. That is people seeking to do things in order to be financially better off, and people doing things in order to raise a family, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's this absolute lack of meaning being the focus has completely lost from what we're kind of doing. And the point I was also touching on earlier that I want to keep revisiting is when we had a world, where the social structures were kind of the same as they've been for centuries or even millennia in some places, technology and the comparisons weren't always around there. People kind of knew what you did. You kind of got it, finish college. If you went to college, sometimes you wouldn't even need to go to college. You would just, when you're 18, you just go get a job, work as a trade. And you did that for the next 40 years. And you go, oh, hi, your name is Sam. What do you do, Sam? Sam says, I'm a carpenter. Such a simple conversation. Today, if you ask somebody, what do you do, especially somebody in the age group of 15 to 35, I promise you, every single time you ask them that question, what do? They are having an existential crisis because they are asking themselves, what do I do? Is this what I do? Is my job what I do? Also, is my job good enough? Is that really what I do? Am I settling? Why does everybody else seem to know what they're doing? I'm still figuring myself. I thought I'd figure it out when I'm going to college. It's like, it's not clear. And we see that as well because people are jumping around jobs all the time. It's not like you stay in one company and you work your way all the way through till you retire. People are having 5 to 6. I think I've seen in one study, it's like 10 jobs. People in my generation on average will have 10 different jobs within their lifetime, which is so different. And those are not just 10 different companies, like those are 10 completely different jobs. It really puts in light, why is there such a meaning crisis? And again, it's not just work gives you meaning, but I'm saying that was one place where we got it. I also talked about religious institutions, community groups, whatever it may be. We had all these structures that made it easy for us to find meaning. What that means in the context of where we're at today, it doesn't mean that it's impossible to find meaning. It means that we have to take the initiative because the structures that we live, that our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents took off to just be happy because they just knew their place in the world, or they were told because religion told them and they just accepted it without question. For better or worse, a lot of us living and most of us listening to this today don't have those as available as the previous generations did, which makes the topic today so much more important because it puts the onus on us to recognize that meaning is an important part, but we have to take the initiative to look for it, to find it, to continue to give it to ourselves. And on that point, I just want to revisit the 3 macronutrients of happiness that we touched on, which was enjoyment, satisfaction, and meaning. And as Jenny mentioned in the very first session, meaning is the most important one to really give those other things lasting happiness. Let's also revisit what meaning is even made up of.
As Nikhil explained earlier, meaning is a complex problem because it doesn't really have clear answers. And it's made up of coherence, purpose, and significance. So coherence means, why do things happen as they do? Purpose is, what am I alive to do? Basically, what is your intention? And lastly, significance, why does my life matter and to whom does it matter? And the difficulty is that like meaning can't be simulated or solved, but it must be lived in. And this is where I think the difficulty comes from, because you just have to go through it. You have to go through the suffering to find your meaning. And there are, no complicated or no tools like technology or math to solve it, because it's not a complicated problem that has specific answers.
So this was a quick survey done. Was it from an HBS class?
Yeah, so this is actually the result of my HBS class of people who are looking for searching for meaning right now, and also like the presence of the current state of meaning, and just explain the axis to you. So this is a questionnaire about the meaning in life, and it assesses 2 dimensions of meaning in life: the presence of meaning in life and the search for meaning in life. Presence is the degree to which a person considers his or her life to be meaningful, and search indicates how strongly a person desires to discover new meaning in one's life. And as you can see, we were, like in my class, we were all over the place. And you can then classify it into the relentless seeker, who is high on search for meaning, high on presence of meaning, happy at home, lost in place. I think these are the unfortunate people who do something and the hopeful wanderers. And I think that really helps, just like filling out such a survey, to know like, where are you? Because as we said, if you don't have meaning in life, that significantly decreases your happiness, because it's one of the blockages to your happiness. And many people, actually said like 60 to 80% of the awake time people spend are thinking about the future, and they're never in the present. And that's also something that is definitely hindering.
I think, as you said, the worst place you could be here isn't the lost in place. And because it's what you're saying is, I don't have meaning in my life and I'm not looking for meaning in my life. And the science definitely says that is a recipe for not being happy in a sustainable way, because like you might be okay in this moment, but as we're going to keep discovering, like what meaning does is it really helps us in those deepest moments of like life will have ups and downs. You might be okay now, but once we rock that boat, you're still going to be okay later. And you'll find that the boxes, at least in my personal experience, the people in any one of those other boxes tend to do better. Because if you have meaning, great. If you don't have it, but you're looking for it, you're in a far better position than somebody who's not even looking for it, because it's like the process of even looking for meaning in and of itself is a philosophical exploration, which has so many benefits that we'll actually touch on. And the ideal place is actually in a place where you have some meaning in your life that you continue. That's known as the relentless seeker. I'll touch on just the two sort of quadrants that halves of our hemispheres of our brain.
Yes, we're now looking at the more from a biological view of how do we process and how does our brain work. And so the left side of our brain is usually like where we study and where we work and where we solve the complicated problems of life with technology, with math abilities. However, on the right side, this is where the complex problems of our life are solved. This is where we wonder. This is where when we are bored, we're just in that side of the brain.
Yeah, like a lot of us have heard of like left side thinking and right side thinking. This is just to reintroduce the concept for somebody who may not have heard it. These two hemispheres, they light up very differently depending on what you're actually using. So kind of introduces us into this concept that we're going to keep revisiting, which is called like the default mode network. So the default mode network is a network of brain regions that light up when your mind is at rest. It's part of your mind that works when you're not focused on the outside world, but in fact turn inward. And it becomes super active during moments of reflection, daydreaming, thinking about your future, and it shuts off the moment you start becoming goal orientated. The moment you're like, okay, here's a maths problem, or how do I get from here to there? Because that's the other side. That's going back to, just flip back to previous side. That's our left side brain here that's firing up and we're going, how do we solve this problem? A default mode is the parts of our brain that actually just fire when we're just sitting there and just being. And it's called the default mode. Actually, I found it interesting because it's part of the brain that like researchers actually discovered by accident. They noticed that certain parts of the brain were just lighting up when participants were just sitting around and doing nothing. It was like when they were measuring their brain activity in between the sessions, when they were like saying, hey, do X and then do Y, and there was this gap in between, they weren't even actually trying to measure it. They noticed there was this part of the brain that was just firing up, and they decided to go, well, let's call it the default mode, because that's the mode in which we are like, there by default. And what makes it so fascinating is it's not, as I said, about doing, but it's about just being. It's the part of our brain that helps us really construct meaning by connecting different parts of our experiences together, our memories, our identity, our sense of purpose. And in other words, it's the part of the brain that helps us answer the questions that are so critical to meaning, like, who am I? Or what does this experience that I'm having mean to me? Or why am I going through this? And research shows that when people have more space for inward thoughts, however you get there, we talked about so many metacognitive tools, but once we're free from that constant stimulation that we're getting in today's world, they tend to report so much higher levels of self-awareness, creativity, and overall life satisfaction. So this is why, as we keep talking about, what we want to do is get better and better at consciously activating the default mode network intentionally, so we can strengthen our own connection with meaning.
But the problem with that is that we don't like being bored and we don't like to stop, because what we do, when you go to the next slide, Nikhil, what we do is when you're bored, we're using our phones, we go on social media, we schedule meetings, we clean the house, we do the laundry. So we invented left brain anti-boredom machines because we don't want to be alone with our thoughts. And as Nikhil explained, we need to be bored to access our default network, and hence the right side of the brain. But the entry point is so painful because we need to be bored to do that. But we oftentimes don't do that because we don't stop. We don't want to be bored.
That's so true. Like, even think about if you take public transport to get to school, get to work. Think about, what do? I would wager that most people listening would either use it to do work, they would try and take some calls, and if there's absolutely nothing to do, we start playing games. Right? What are games? That games are micro problem-solving exercises, and it gives us dopamine stimulation every time we solve a level or get something right. Because we don't want to just sit there as if, like, we're so wired to left side thinking that we resent moments of boredom. So we've created false tasks that don't even exist to occupy that time. I really, really like one of the things that you shared with me after you come back from class, which is the goal here, if we know that, is to create moments of boredom in our day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we really have structured our lives so I'm always hyper efficient. I'm always utilizing every minute, especially for those high achievers who are so used to multitasking like masters. We have packed every little piece there. And the trick that you want to do, again, why? Because it will help you find meaning. It will help you activate your default mode network, which will drive greater overall levels of happiness. So if that's what you want to do, you need to kind of short circuit everything you're doing and force yourself to have micro moments within your day where you are bored out of your mind. You're not doing, you're not reading, you're not completing a task. You're just, like we used to do before technology took over, just sitting in the park and staring out, not for a run, just literally sitting in the park and staring into the abyss for the hell of it. Or moments of, like, meditation where I'm just sitting and being, or just doing useless things with, like, not even got things. Is hard because it becomes task orientated, but it's really about just creating moments of boredom. Do you have any examples you want to share on that where you've? Yeah, we'll come back to that. Session this.
And so, as Nikhil explained earlier, we are in a meaning crisis, and also this crisis, doesn't get solved with more complicated tools to solve a complex problem, because that doesn't work. But to explain the meaning doom loop, life's complex problems are unaddressed because you don't know how to solve those, because they have to be lived and understood. That leads to the meaning crisis, that leads to more depression and anxiety. We see that in the data. We have device addiction because we don't want to be bored. We number emotions with devices, and again, like technical work, like sitting in front of a computer, or technological distraction with phones. That doesn't solve a complex problem because these are complicated tools. These are tools for complicated problems. And so now we touch upon how you can actually get more meaning in your life.
And a big part of this is just recognizing you have this. It's like part of any therapy or part of any problem-solving solution you get into is just recognizing, hey, I have a problem. Hey, I hate boredom. I fill my life with tasks. Maybe you don't create boredom yet. Just start by calling it out. It makes such a big difference. Before we switch over, I just have a small technical issue. We're just going to pause for 10 seconds and we'll be right back with you. I think we're good. We should be back. So there's this thing of beware the palace of crystal, and the palace of crystal is this it's this metaphor that was used of this utopian world in which everything in that world was built perfectly on order and reason, and every human had their perfect needs met. And it's just this thing of saying, if we work to solve every single problem and we take out all the unpredictability and chaos out of life, what it actually did as a result in that utopian thing is that it made life meaningless. Like in the pursuit of trying to solve every problem, they actually created a bigger problem, which is life wasn't meaningful anymore. It's this kind of thing of like, just be okay. My kind of takeaway is like, just be okay with, the chaos of life as it is, and true meaning often involves, contradiction, complexity, and the freedom to just make mistakes, and not everything has to be perfect. And sometimes boredom is actually great. I think this is a big one to really just think about. We touched on this earlier, so I'll skip over it, but this idea that previous generations didn't struggle with the same meaning crisis that we did. A, because of the structures that we talked about, but B, because they had so much time to ponder. What happened? The sun went down in some places at 4 p.m. And when the sun goes down, you can't work. There's no electricity. Maybe you sit around the campfire with some friends, but you're bored out of your mind. You literally can't do anything. And what do? Eventually, you just be. You just be with yourself. And hopefully you start pondering the great questions. And that's what the great rishis did. They spent the time just being and pondered those questions and how really found meaning. If you don't want to take it even that spiritually, your great grandparents were so much more happier and meaningful than most of us were, just because they had so much boredom time. How do we do this, Jenny?
So how to give more meaning in life? The first step, or the first solution is to just detox yourself, meaning have tech-free times each day. For example, the first hour after you get up, or no phones during you have meals, or no phones after 7 p.m. These are just examples, but I think you get the idea. Tech-free zones, no technology in the bedroom or in the classroom as we have at HBS. And our professor actually does tech fasts every year, where he goes somewhere and like doesn't have any technology with him. This is just really to allow boredom and to not distract yourself.
I wanted to be very candid, not sit on a high horse here. This is a very much a do what I say, not do what I do situation, because I know I don't do any of this, right? Like, yes, I created other ways, but I personally struggle with this. I'm attached to my phone. Even when the session, my phone's here, it's on do not disturb, but it's with me. And yeah, I know it's difficult. And I've seen things like this before, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm not doing that. Like, technology is too important in my life. So I was saying I empathize, and one thing I think about is okay, I don't think it has to be an all or nothing. You can do things incrementally. Okay, I recognize that this is a problem. Great. I'm not going to completely get rid of my phone from my bedroom, because half the time I use my phone is in my bedroom. But what I'm going to do is half an hour before sleeping, I'm going to stop using it. Or when I'm having a conversation with my partner, we're putting our phones away. Or other moments where I can create more presence, I can create more moments of boredom. It doesn't have to be like, let's go back to the old age. And I know this because especially the younger generations are probably looking at this and just going, yeah, this is just created by some 70-year-old guy who never grew up with phones. And it's partly true, but also like there are ways in which we can create this and adapt it to our own things, right?
Mm-hmm. And so the second one, as Nikhil already touched upon, is really to invite boredom in your life. And that could be a workout without headphones. It could be don't turn on the radio when you go on a drive with your car, or do a walk without listening to music or a podcast, and just be with yourself and allow the boredom and just find an activity that suits your needs and preferences. But I think that's something that can be super easily invited in your day, and it can also be super short.
And I just put this specifically also on the music point. I find there is almost nowhere that I go anywhere. It's in the gym, walking, I will always have music playing. older generations might not resonate with this so much, but I assume anybody in my generation or younger, you probably live your life exactly the same way. Those aren't moments of boredom, because what we've given ourselves is something to be distracted by, the music. And I'm not going to get rid of that entirely, but I just call that out to just be conscious. Sometimes we think we're being bored. We think we're going for a walk and doing nothing. We're not doing nothing. We're listening to music. So what Jenny's really saying is actually you create real intentional moments of boredom. Ditch the music. You don't want to have that to distract you. Walk long enough so you're like, hey, what am I like? Feel the boredom. Let that creep over you. But the music is, I think, a real distraction for all of us in a way. Not a bad thing. It's just know what you're trying to do.
Thirdly, we also touched upon that, to ponder the big questions of life. Who am I? What am I alive to do? Why is my life like, to whom is my life significant? Do I have free will? And it's really, the essence of humanity is to ask questions. It's not to provide answers. It's really just being curious about life and asking questions.
We're actually going to touch on this in a little bit. One thing I just want to put out there, because I know so many people are skeptical around the why waste my time? There's no answer. It's not possible. Or the answer is obvious, or whatever it may be. The point here isn't to get an answer to have to convince everybody else. This is about you. And it's not even about convincing yourself. It's not getting an answer. It's just the process of pondering is the benefits. And that's what's lost to a lot of people. It's like, oh, well, does God exist? What is God? What is the nature of the universe? What is my personal life? How was the world created? Some people genuinely think it's a waste of time thinking about these questions because there's no way you can get an answer to them. What they're missing, and again, this is what the science shows, it's not about getting an answer. It is the process of asking the question itself that does something in your brain so magically that gets you happier. I'm going to touch on that. Say that, so if you're finding people having pushback, remind them that it doesn't matter what the answer they get to is. But people who ask the questions are so much happier than people who don't.
And then lastly, in that series of how to get more meaning in life is to get smaller, to expand your frame of reference. And that could be through meditation, through faith, serving others. And that's really, I think, also the transcendence piece, which we also dive deeper into following.
And this is such a common one. I touched on this in the first session. There's the old trope of, if a kid is not eating his food properly that mum puts on the table, back in the day, parents would be like, oh, there are starving children in some third world country. They would be so happy to have this food. You should eat it. Why are they doing that? It's irrespective of whether it's a good way to parent is not what I'm an expert on. But the reason why that kind of works is like, hey, you're putting yourself in perspective of what's going on, and automatically this kid who is so miserable of like, I don't like my life, actually goes, yeah, I guess it's not so bad when the big picture. Or other things that like therapists, motivational speakers, religious leaders often do is if you come in and be like, hey, I'm really, really upset because my sister stole my toy. Or, I'm dumbing it down as children, but it could be even grown adults. We have issues, right? You if you're complaining going, hey, my coworker yelled at me yesterday, you might be really, really upset. And if you talk to a therapist, a spiritual leader, or whatever it is, one of the first things, maybe not first, but one of the things that people will do in that conversation go, hey, do you realize that the world, the universe is so big? There is, I don't know how many billions of stars in this, in this universe, and this universe is one of many billions galaxies, and et cetera, et cetera. And you're this tiny little group of atoms, and you're worrying about what one person said to you and not thinking about all the other beautiful things that are going on in this beautiful earth. Did you see there was a rainbow yesterday? Did you see, we created rockets that can fly to Mars? Why do they do that? Because when we get so caught up in ourself, and we talked about, we get caught up into our own our own identity of ourselves. I'm actually going to talk a lot more about identity today. But we get caught up in this little world that we have created, and we make ourselves miserable. And all of us kind of know this. This is the seeing the big picture, doing this. And the why, a lot of people think it's stupid. They're like, oh, why do I need to do that? I don't care. That's not helping me. No, it does. It helps you because, again, the science says making yourself very small and making the world very, very big, again, does some beautiful neurochemical stuff that makes you less worried, makes you more happy. So, diving in a little bit further, I love this. The self-reflection paradox. Um, the self-reflection paradox, for all the Marvel fans out there, is similar to with great power comes great responsibility. We are such a blessed life. We are such a blessed species. The human, just being alive and being human is unlike any other biological experience in the universe. And the biggest reason for why that is because of, we talked about this last time, our prefrontal cortex that gives us the most amazing ability to even realize that we exist. That's called self-reflection. It is a cognitive ability that we have developed. And if I'm actually not mistaken, I don't think any other species has developed, because I'm actually curious. I don't want to digress. But anyway, we are the species. Let's start with, we have developed it, at least, because it confers such a beautiful advantage on us, which is the fact that we know we exist. We know we exist means that we can also think about what we may need tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that, and we can plan and we can reason and we can do all these amazing things that has made the human race create buildings and, unlock the powers of energy and travel and maths and science and medicine and all these things, is because of our ability. It just starts with the fact that we know we exist. The fact that we know we exist has allowed us to do so many amazing marvels, truly marvels. Yet, this power, without true responsibility and using it, which is how we're all born. When you're born into the human being, you're not given a training manual on, hey, these are all the amazing powers you get, but here's a safety manual on, you should be careful with this because this is a risk. And, when you find yourself doing that, you're not told any of this. You're just thrown into this body and being like, figure it out. So you have all this self-reflection ability, but that is this very thing that is the biggest cause of all our unhappiness and all our what's known as maladjustment, which is no other species in the entire creation is unhappy. There are so many cats, I'm using cats as an example, stray cats who don't get food every night because they either hunt and they feed, or they don't hunt and they starve. The ones that don't get food are not unhappy. They don't know what else to be. They just are. We are the only species that even knows to be unhappy. If you don't get food today, you are going to be unhappy. Just think about that. There's no other species that complains about its existence. It doesn't know that it even can complain. It doesn't even know that that's something that is possible. And that's what maladjustment is. Maladjustment is you haven't adjusted, like you aren't okay with your own existence. To be not okay with your own existence, you have to know you exist. And that is the paradox here, that your greatest source of all your strengths and amazing marvels is also the very source of all your unhappiness. And we need to learn to regulate that and nurture it and know that that's a trap if we want to be happy. It's such a core aspect of being human, and it's something that almost nobody even, I don't think, talks about when children are growing up, when adults are growing up. We struggle to exist. There is no other species alive that complains about its existence, and that is because we know we exist. Which also gives us this concept that I'm going to frame this as Western psychologists have framed as the I self, me self. But this is a concept that has been around in Vedanta, in Buddhist traditions, in spiritual traditions so much, many, like literally since the start of millennia, like philosophical traditions of the observer and the observed. So we're using both sets of languages so different groups of people can understand what we're talking about. But it's this idea that there is two, I'm just keep it simple. There are two identities here. There is the person who you are seeing in the mirror, and there is the person who is doing the seeing. So the subject and the object. The subject is what we're referring here to as the I self or the observer. And the me self is the thing being observed or the object of the observation. Why are we talking about all this nonsense? I think a lot of people may relate to it, but if people are new to this idea of observer and metacognition and what is this, why is this so important? Because recognizing that we have these different selves and how it affects how we even think about ourselves is so critical to our happiness. This me self, this identity that you go, this is Nikhil, this is Jenny. If I ask you, who are you? If you look in the mirror and go, if I look in the mirror and go, I am a X number of years old, male with a beard, I'm wearing a shirt, I'm a certain number of centimeters tall, I am good at X, I am bad at Y, I am blah, 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 blah. We have told ourselves that that is who we are, and we identify so much with that. But then what we don't realize, and this is such a fundamental concept to actually breaking through and even, trying to pursue your own happiness, is everything that you've told yourself about who you are, those are learned experiences that you have had throughout your life, that those experiences have told you, for example, if you say, hey, I like ice cream. If you're identifying, if I walk around saying, my name is Nikhil, and I am somebody who likes ice cream, that I've created an identity out of that. Where did I even get the desire to like ice cream? I like ice cream because during my childhood, I used to go get ice cream with my parents, or maybe I did with my friends, or when I had ice cream, I had a good experience, and I want to keep, and over time, I've told myself that this is something I like, and this is who I am, and blah, 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 blah. This is a constructed image of who I am. At the same time, there is the fact that I'm even able to talk about myself means that there is somebody doing the observing behind all this. And that's what, whether you talk it spiritually or scientifically or irrespective, we're referring to here as the I self or the observer. And what we need to get so much better at, and it's just such a big concept that we can do, honestly, a 3-hour session on this alone. So we're trying to bring this idea very condensed. What you need to get better at doing if you want to pursue your own happiness is getting out of that me self, which serves a purpose. It helps us relate. It's important in the world, but like we said, knowing its place, able to go back into going, I am not the thing that I am just seeing, I am the observer, helps us go to a much more stable happiness. It helps us regulate the ups and downs of our emotions, because we are so attached to that identity that anything that affects that identity causes these huge ripples of emotions. And being able to take a step back and realize you have this identity doesn't necessarily mean that that is just who you are, gives us so much opportunity to build true, lasting happiness, to deal with anxiety. Again, I highly, highly recommend Michael Singer's work on this. Living Untethered is a absolute masterpiece in actually breaking down what is the I self and the me self. Who is the observant? What is this identity that you've built up about yourself that is causing you so much misery? And why are you even able to do that comes back to the fact that we're even aware. The fact that we have that is kind of the problem and the solution. So we kind of talked a lot about, okay, we know what the problem is. We know what we're kind of the trap we're falling into. How do we get out of this? Like everything we're trying to talk about, we don't want to just give you a bunch of studies and just tell you random facts. We want to try to turn it into what does it actually mean for us?
So there are three forms of transcendence of the me self, because as we said, less me, more I. And the first one is other serving behavior, meaning giving. The second is spiritual or religious experiences, that you're a small part of the universe. And lastly, philosophical exploration, meaning mindfulness.
So the first one is something that will be very familiar to all the BYM masters here, which is seva, service. One of the most powerful and science-backed ways to transcend is the other serving behavior. That is giving, serving, helping. Again, why do we want to do this again, Jenny? What's the point of transcendence?
Because we want to put ourselves in the I self in a manual way. So
That's
basically
exactly
putting ourselves into the observer.
So we're just connecting the dots here. Like a lot of people are like, why should I care about this? Giving, selfless. Okay, that sounds great. Why? Let's connect the dots what we just said. The reason we are unhappy is because we are getting caught in the me self. We are getting caught in this version, this identity that we have created. This is not a spiritual concept. This is a psychological concept. This is fully grounded in psychological studies, and there's like, this is what causes anxiety. This is what causes depression. You can't get out of your little me self, the object of what your observation is. So that's what we want to do. How do we do it? We want to transcend. We want to transcend from the me self to the I self, go from being the object to the observer. And the first one of doing that is other serving behavior. I know this is sounding repetitive, but it's something you really want to hammer in, because I know so many people, when they hear about giving and serving, and their immediate response is, why should I care? Why does that help me? It is, you care because it is the most selfish thing to do. I think the most selfish thing to do, if you care about your happiness, is actually to serve other people. And this is something we're going to actually help you really understand. So this is actually the studies on this. In terms of, they actually ran a study where they were doing random acts of kindness, and I forgot the full context here, but I think what they told the participants, they gave gifts to participants, and they were told them, we want you to give them to somebody, and we want to measure how they react. But what the people didn't realize is the people giving the gifts were actually the ones who they were observing. They didn't care about the people who were getting the gifts. The scientists actually wanted to see what was the impact on the person giving these random acts of kindness, these random acts of kindness with different strangers. And they showed, compared to a control group, there was such a big increase in happiness, or what they used as their measure of happiness. What they also looked is across the spectrum, if you break down a whole range of other things. So we talked about this very briefly in the first thing, but we have emotions, and emotions aren't binary. We have positive emotions and negative emotions, and they both coexist. We have mixed feelings. So they looked at what happens to positive emotions when you give. They saw this first bar here on the right side, there was a huge increase in positive affects or positive emotions for the gift giver. there was also a reduction in negative feelings. So combined, you have a huge overall increase in well-being, which is PANAS, positive and negative. You had an increase in gratitude, you have an increase in optimism, and an increase in overall life satisfaction. So all this is saying that, we know that giving feels good, but this is saying the science actually says giving makes you happier. Serving other people makes you happier. So for all the BYA masters here, again, we thank you so much for all the time and effort you give. And we hope that each of you have been able to feel a bit of this yourself in the process of this. One of the things that often comes up is like, I actually asked you this earlier. So what happens though? Some people feel that they have nothing to give. Does that mean you have to be wealthy and you have to be really good off in order to take advantage of this like shortcut? How does that work, Jenny?
So our professor shared a really interesting example. So he walked through the streets of New York, and so he basically asked a homeless person and for a prayer in return for giving. He gave him something, and then in return, he asked him to pray for his family. And so even if you feel like you have nothing to give, there's always something that you can give.
And it makes such a big difference. It's also empowering, I think, especially in those situations. It gives you back your dignity and it gives you back a sense of self. It's so empowering. When you give, again, going back into what's happening, what's the science saying on what happens when you serve people, when you give, you feel love. So oxytocin, we talked about this, and we talked about emotions and brain chemistry and relationships. Oxytocin is that feeling of connection. You feel when a mother has a newborn child, or even any child, that's the chemical that's firing up that creates a physiological sense of closeness. So giving creates that same hormone, the same chemical pumping through your brain, which makes you feel it's connected, happy. All these are like very like positive brain chemistry. It increases dopamine. So most of us by now should know what dopamine is. It's the big pleasure reward. It's the kick you get every time you eat something that you like or you win a prize. It increases serotonin, which is feelings of calm and wellness. And it moderates cortisol release. So cortisol is stress. It's like fired when you're having stress and have high anxiety. There is so many studies that actually show that a lot of chronic health conditions are caused and highly correlated and often caused by prolonged increases of cortisol. You don't want to be living a life where your cortisol is constantly spiking. It leads to so many adverse health effects. And giving really helps reduce that, as so many metacognitive tools do. The second aspect is like, okay, we know giving is great. That's one thing you can do. What else can you do? Spiritual religious experiences. So spiritual and religious experiences reduce the activity in parts of the brain that lowers the overthinking and rumination that we all like to do. And that creates these spiritual, mystical experiences, you can call them, whatever that means to you. You have this moment of true transcendence. That could be in meditation. That could be, again, in a religious experience, if you're having a vision, having a sense of closeness, having like something that just felt that everything aligned. Those moments, they truly make you feel connected with the universe. Again, not in a spiritual sense, for some people maybe, for some people in a non-spiritual sense, but these serendipitous moments, they really help you come out of, oh, poor me and my little self and my problems. They pull you into the observer mode. They pull you into what so many people who have spiritual experiences will talk about is a sense of oneness, a sense of connectedness with all the universe. And so many of the BYM members have felt this in different ways, and that's what's going on. It's when you have these moments, it fires up parts of your brain that is lowering the overthinking, lowering the rumination, and increasing your overall well-being.
And that was measured on a monk. This is the picture you can see on the right side, where they could see like what's happening in the brain. as Nikhil just explained.
This is a small aside. Won't touch on this too long, but it was an interesting thing of why do people often become more spiritual, more religious as they grow in age? And Hinduism actually does a really good job of explaining it. So much so that the professor actually used it as an example in the class. But at a more general level, it's this simple idea of when you're a child, you kind of just accept. You don't know. You're forming an identity of what the world is. So if your parents tell you that there is a God and the God does X and we believe in it, you take it as this is must be true, and that's your first sort of 25 years. But then once you come out of the nest, you start wanting to kind of see things for yourself and question things, and you're more focused on the materialistic day to day. At that point, it's almost like a rejection of I'm trying to form my own identity. So that's the kind of rebelling phase of I'm getting rid of that. I don't believe it. My parents are backwards. That made sense for them. And you kind of go through your own sort of self-exploration, which often coincides with a big dip in a loss of faith, a loss of spiritual exploration for most people. And then as you go through later parts of life, you end up kind of finding your way back. And it was interesting because in the class, like a lot of people were kind of asking, there was actually one person in the class who was like, hey, I felt like I was really religious when I was younger, and now I feel like I don't believe in the stuff that I used to, and I don't believe, like, I think my parents are too religious, or what. I'm paraphrasing, but he almost felt bad. He was like, you're telling me that religion or spirituality can play such a big role in my happiness, but I also feel like I'm so disconnected. And the professor was kind of laughed, and he was like, guess what? You're right on track. This is exactly where you should be based on the science. Don't worry. When you're 50, you'll probably turn around and call me up and say, hey, I'm really religious now. And you're probably going to find your way back to the nest and back to the religion that your parents were part of, or the spiritual tradition, or whatever it is. Because that is the cycle of life that we always kind of, you notice over time. So I say that if there are parents who are kind of concerned of like, well, we wish our children would benefit from this, you kind of have to let them go through their own journey to come back to it, because they need to go through that process of shelling it, resenting it. Not my advice. So the science is descriptively saying just happens. Having said that, I know personally that I have benefited so much by having my own spiritual journey so much earlier. And it is something that I highly, highly recommend to everybody to pursue in their own form, because what we kind of describe is what happens, not necessarily what should happen. Like, I genuinely believe, and I've seen this firsthand experience that we talked about earlier, the process of asking these questions is so important. So if you can start that journey earlier, you're only going to set yourself up for more success. But again, it's like you don't have to put the pressure on yourself to do that if that's feeling like it's not coming naturally to you in that moment. There are other ways to still find happiness. And mindfulness, meditation, all of us here, we know this pretty well, is such a powerful way to transcend. It is the best way to get out of the me self and into the I self. I'm going to keep it very short here because we're all experts on meditation from the people listening, but I love this picture on the left here. The reason I love it is we are all experts at meditating, and we all practice meditation. But I always ask people, how often do you actually bring your meditation into your real life? Because that's the whole point. The whole point of the meditation we do is we practice going into going into the observer, be the observer, so that when our life is stressful or whatever it is, that's when you want to do it. But I know there are many great meditators who spend hours meditating, but never actually bring that into their real life. And look at the picture on the left, and it just shows you how simple truly being in a mindful state is. There's a picture of an owner and his dog on a park bench. And the owner is sitting there thinking about his car, he's thinking about his travel plans next week, he's thinking about his job, he's thinking about so many other things. What's the dog doing? The dog is just sitting there thinking about sitting there with his owner. That's it. If the dog's eating, he's thinking about eating. If he's playing, he's thinking about playing. There's nothing else. Where he is, what he's doing is what he thinks about. And I love that because it just encapsulates of how not in the present are we most of the times that we live our life, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about, actually, I'll come back to this in a second. So philosophical transcendence is the third kind of thing that we talked about, which is distinct from giving and distinct from meditation, which is just the process of asking the big questions of life. Why am I here? What am I trying to do? Why do we suffer? Is there an afterlife? What is, what are chakras? Do chakras exist? All these things. These are the journey of asking these questions is so powerful. You don't even need the answer, but the process of doing it completely changes how you transcend because it pulls you out of that me self and brings you into the I self, pulls you out of being your identity you've created and helps you become the observer. And if people are kind of sitting there struggling, going, hey, I've never really pondered these questions, and maybe I meditate, I'm not really familiar with philosophy, and I don't know what's going on. There's a bunch of different ways I'll kind of suggest you go about that, because in this particular session, I'm not here to kind of share my views on the topic. I'm just trying to keep it very neutral in terms of what you can do. Broadly speaking, philosophically, we have this big question of existence and essence, where existence is yourself, the physical body, and then the essence is the thing within us. In different traditions call that different things. Even science has, we can call it the mind versus the body, or we can call it the soul, or we can call it the atma, we can call it so many different things. So there are different ways in which we can kind of ponder these big questions. We could ask ourselves, does the thing that is inside here, does that come before the body comes? Or was the body here before the thing inside of it? Or is there just no thing inside of it and everything just is kind of meaningless? And there's like so many different ways you can ask it, but like the point is, it doesn't matter what answer you get to. The process of asking these questions is such a powerful metacognitive tool to get you out of your pattern of being obsessed with your me self, your identity, the pains, the anxious worries you are having, and really get you to look at the big picture in life. It doesn't matter whether you get an answer to this question. It doesn't even matter if your answer to this question is wrong. The science is saying if you just ask these questions, they take you so much closer towards being happier than people who don't ask these questions. So if you want to kind of start this, it is hard trying to wade this big ocean and knowing, where do I begin? What am I trying to do? One of the ways you can do it is take it in really, really small little pieces. And this is why in age-old traditions, we had guides and gurus and teachers. And even BYM, we have so many masters here who bring wonderful, wonderful little topics across the spectrum. And it is such a great way to participate and learn. And I encourage each of you, if there are people who are trying to get into this, to encourage them to engage with the different material. And it doesn't even have to be things that we share through BYM. It could be anything that they're interested in, because it is going to help them bring that curiosity and help them get closer to their own happiness. But gurus and guides are so helpful in helping us make sense of these questions when you've never really had a way of thinking about them. But that doesn't mean that we don't have to apply our own thinking as well. The gurus and guides can help us, but we still need to ask the questions for ourselves. We're not deferring or delegating that task to somebody else. Do you want to touch on this? So we have we've talked about little exercises throughout the day, and we'll come back to this in a little bit, but simply, there are so many exercises we can do to help us get out of that object self and back into the I self. So we want to change sort of gears now and just talk about, we've talked about the different macronutrients of happiness, from satisfaction to enjoyment to meaning, which is a lot of the focus that we did today. Now we're actually just talking about, what does the science actually say on best practices for living an overall happy life, and what are the kind of factors that lead to people being unhappy, right? Why should you care? Because this is your future. Like, this is going to be your life, whether you like it or not. And personally, I would like to know what I can do. Right, taking it one day at a time is also completely fine. If you want to actually know, well, what can I learn from all the people that have gone before me? Hopefully, this will help shed some light on that. Touch on some of those changes that happen normally throughout life.
I mean, it's just like some studies that show that it is completely normal that our personality change as we grow older, and mostly for the better when it comes to positive but also like neutral changes. For example, in terms of positive changes, our agreeableness rises throughout the adulthood, and also our like changes in emotions falls until the mid-50s, and then it becomes stable.
So change is kind of good. There are always changes that are kind of happening. I highly recommend to take advantage of that openness to experience if you're in that window. And it's obviously something you can increase with if you want to do it consciously, but we do become more rigid as we get older. And that makes it harder for us to even pursue our own happiness, because we think we know it all. We think we've tried it all. And we kind of resign ourselves to, I am going to be miserable because if there was a way for me to be happy, I would have figured it out by now. And take advantage of the open-mindedness you have when you are earlier in your life, and try things, experiment, figure out what works for you, so you can really set yourself up for that next 100 years to have the right happiness habits. What's the journey that we tend to go through?
I think the next one.
Okay.
Oh, because it's an animation. So there is a study done on like what happens with happiness throughout our life, and it shows on the x-axis the age, and then on the y-axis like life satisfaction and happiness, and it shows that happiness tends to fall until we are like a little bit older, like 50, and then it starts to rise. And then the question is, does it like go? Does happiness grow or does happiness fall? And we're gonna dive deeper into different pathways. But it's you can imagine when you're like a little bit 50, like there's like certain stresses, for example, career and family, and we talked about the meaning crisis, and so like happiness decreases until that age, but at some point when you start like having finding your faith again, and you you have experiences, and you have had certain experiences in your life, and you find certain tools to find more meaning, then happiness increases, and then like at the age of like 66, and then the question becomes like, does happiness go up or does happiness go down again?
And when I look at this, I feel, wow, that's scary, because it seems that most people just start, like when you're in your 20s, everything's a possibility. You're so optimistic, have so much freedom, no responsibilities. And it just like, it shows that everybody just gets more miserable. Every year you kind of get more and more miserable until you hit that point that Jenny mentioned. So this is not saying that you are doomed. This is saying when we do big studies on the population, this is what we find happens to most people. So if you're listening to this workshop right now, you're probably not most people, because you are actively working on how can I learn the science of happiness and use it to my advantage. And I'm one of those people as well. I look at this and I go, well, if I leave it to kind of my impulses and chance, I'm just going to get more miserable. And there are things that people are doing in that period from when the dip happens they're consciously making different choices. They are living their life in a way, it's not that they just become happier. They are doing things, their values change, their priorities change. They're focusing on the things that matter. And those things that matter are the things that we have talked to you about over this 3-course session of those macronutrients of happiness. So the takeaway here is, this is what most people have. This is what happens to most people. And that's okay if it's you. But if you want to avoid that inevitable kind of dip and really fast track that or keep yourself stable or an incline, start to take those best practices, take the science and use it and start applying it today. Start applying it today where you're probably at a much higher level and you can at least retain that and hopefully even build that happiness as life kind of gets more kind of chaotic.
So these are the two outcomes for your, let's say, last half of your life, where your happiness increases as you get older, or the striver's curse, you get stuck on the lower branch of happiness, and you become probably the most unhappy that you've ever been in your life.
And I think this is something really you all want to think about, going, okay, here's a fork. I know I definitely want to be on that top happiness plan. What do I need to do to get there? And what are the things that's going to pull me into the bottom?
So for people who are on the upper branch of the happiness curve as of age 66, these are the things that get you there according to the Harvard study of adult development. And the four steps and the happiness plan is really about health. It is no smoking, no drinking, exercising, like having a healthy body weight and daily exercises. And then step 5 would be adaptive coping mechanisms like metacognition, no rumination, and how to deal with your
again,
emotions.
rumination, if people aren't familiar, is just overthinking.
Exactly. And then number 6, which is I think a really beautiful concept of being a lifelong learner and being curious and asking questions, reading, thinking, and surrounding yourself with people who are different and who challenge you and who go on adventures, and just really being this lifelong learner. And then lastly, and we also talked about this in depth now, is love, meaning stable, long-term romantic partnership or a partnership or very close friendships. And as we know, started the session with like, how many useless friends do you have? And like friends that are there no matter what, that you can call at 2 a.m. And then will be there without any reason behind. So these are the things that bring you up at the upper branch of happiness. And now these are the things that get you stuck on the lower branch of happiness in older age. And that is the burden of the high achievers who just don't want to leave the party and who just continue to work hard and just are stuck in the hedonic treadmill of just working hard to get the next achievement and the next achievement, but I truly don't realize that satisfaction is not permanent.
I think one of the big ones of the striver's curse here is higher power predicts trouble after retirement is such an important one to really wrap your head around. Because what happens is, if you have been a high achiever, you have likely got your me self, this identity that you've created. The worth you assign to it is largely around your job. It's largely around, I am X, I am a doctor, I am a high-ranking government official, I am an engineer, I am whatever it is. And you have gotten so much self-worth from that. You've gotten your relationships, your identity, whatever it may be. And now, when you kind of hit retirement, you lose all of that. You don't have that anymore. And because your happiness was coming from there, now there's this huge vacuum because you have made your happiness dependent on this thing that was never going to last. And now when it's time to enjoy your life, you can't enjoy your life because that is who you were. Like, you watched about, who am I now if I don't have a job? If people don't praise me, if I don't have the power I had. And you see this so much today. People don't want to retire. I think in the old days, I think a lot of people would be like, how do I retire as quickly as possible? Now people have so much money and they still don't want to retire because they are afraid of losing their identity with their job. And they're rightly afraid so, because if your identity and your happiness is coming from there, the science shows you are going to be miserable once you retire. You're going to fall into that bottom curve, which kind of comes back to, what are your sources of happiness? In the very, very first session, we talked about the hedonic treadmill, which is that external circumstances are never going to bring you lasting increases in your happiness. And this is one of the ways in which we see that. That power, that status, that job may have given you some satisfaction for some period of time, but it is inevitably going to end. And you need to make sure that in your happiness plan, you know that's going to happen. You know that your happiness will take a dip if you anchor on that. So how are you setting yourself up to make sure your happiness is less and less dependent on that identity, and more just centered in your I self, your truest self, just you being the observer, not dependent on these identities that you've created for yourself that are coming to an end. Retirement is also a big one we talked about because of social isolation. Health risks go through the roof because people lack purpose. They lack the physical exercise of going to a job. There are so many things around that. And if you don't want your happiness to plummet, you really have to make sure that you have social structures as well when you go into retirement. Because if your social structure only came from having a job, you'll struggle. Big example of this is what we talked about, deal friends. Friends that are only there because they want something from you versus useless friends. The moment you don't have a job, all those deal friends are gone because they don't need you anymore. They were only friends with you because they needed that relationship with you, and you enjoyed people needing you, so you didn't mind the relationship. Now you've gone into retirement or a different phase and you don't have that. You're going to set yourself up for misery unless you've done the things that Jenny talked about. Building more useless friends, building an identity outside of this job, creating other macronutrients. And a big one is finding meaning. That we've talked about how you can do that a little bit now, but it's really recognizing that it's okay for some meaning to come from my job, but my job shouldn't be the only source of meaning in my life, because when I don't have a job, you then are going to have a meaning crisis. And it's the same thing even with unemployment. It might not be retirement, but if you get fired from your job, or you, for whatever reason, switch countries and now are unemployed, the same things that we talked about, the success ending, the deal friends, the lack of meaning, all of these things are going to affect you the same way. So I say this because even if you're much younger and you're like, I don't have to retire for 30 years, I don't need to worry about this. Okay, maybe you don't have to retire, but you might get fired. You might have to change countries and you might have to be unemployed for a while. There are so many other things that are going to replicate exactly this. And if you want to make sure that you're going to continue to be happy, take the advice of what the science is telling you and prepare yourself to set yourself up for success. 3 things to remember to get us back on that upper branch.
So this just shows that our skills and abilities change throughout our lifetime. And I think when you got to the next slide, this really shows that, like we have peaks and declines when it comes to our brain power, which is like here called the fluid intelligence, which is really just the raw thinking power that you use to solve problems, to memorize things, for creativity and innovation. And that like really decreases with age. It's just like, that is just biology. And then you have on the right side is the crystallized intelligence, also what you can call wisdom, or accumulated knowledge and experience. And this is where this is why most people then shift their careers from being the analyst and doing everything on your own to becoming a teacher and a mentor, because of your accumulated knowledge and experience and the wisdom that you can share with the younger generation. But I think it's just like having awareness that that our abilities and skills change throughout our life, and knowing that it is okay that we can memorize things as we could when we are 20 years old, and that we can't solve the problems um, as fast as we could when we were younger. But it's just a shift, and accepting that shift.
And it's really, the change is inevitable, right? I think you find this happen a lot with people who have been really, really high achieving in, like, take sport. If you were a pro tennis player, it's frustrating watching the younger kids come up, and eventually, when your identity is built around, I'm a great tennis player, eventually you're not as good as the next generation because you're getting older. Biology is meaning that you're not recovering as well. There's so many other factors, and it's not just in physical sports. Cognitively, we all decline as we get older. There are things we can do to slow the rate of decline, but decline is part of we're born and we die. It's part of life. And if we resist that, that's what's going to drive that unhappiness, because we're frustrated that our happiness must come from I'm the best at everything. Great, that may have been some source of happiness. What we're trying to tell you is the science is kind of matching the common sense obvious aspect, which is, if you were the best at something, I promise you, you're not going to be the best at it forever. In fact, for probably not that long. So you need to start thinking about, what are the other sources of happiness that I can really get in my life, and make that transition.
Mm-hmm. And that graph shows that there's an inception point where the raw thinking power, the fluid intelligence declines, and our crystallized intelligence, meaning our wisdom and the experience and knowledge that has been accumulated over time, increase. And this is then where the curves shift, and then where the question then poses on the next slide. The question is like, your skills and abilities change. So how does your second curve look like? When do you become the instructor to other people and change from the innovator to the instructor?
And this comes back to the question around purpose we've posed at the start. So we've talked about meaning and purpose. If your purpose is, I'm going to be the best at everything, I'm going to be the best lawyer, software engineer, tennis player, whatever it is, you're going to be miserable, because at some point you're not. So this comes about, it's okay, change is inevitable. How are you still going to give yourself purpose when change happens? And as Jenny said, one of the best ways is to go, I'm going to move into being an instructor of something. I still have so much to give, and I'm going to get better and better at doing that as I get older, because that's what the science says. So lean into the areas that are going to become more and more natural to you as each of us get older.
And then accepting that, there are different career paths. And when you go to the slide before, a lot of people think that, at least in our generation, that a career must be linear. There's only one way up, and every step must be better than the step before. And that is obviously not true, because also horizontal moves, or like something, you change areas, you change functions, you stop something that can be super useful to your own happiness, to your career, but it doesn't have to be linear per se. And what it actually shows, that our careers are much more spiral than I think what we want to acknowledge. And so the question on the next slide is just acknowledge that your career may be spiral or not linear, and ask yourself, when is the time to quit and to do something else, to reinvent yourself, and to increase your happiness through that. And the last one is be willing to change your beliefs and your perspective, because change is actually pretty good. But if you're stuck with your own belief system, your perspectives, that can become very rigid. And also our environment changes all the time. So why would you stick with your own opinions and beliefs? So it is normal and healthy to change your views. What do you think that probably wasn't right? And ask to you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of this session and our 3-part series on the science of happiness. And as we kind of wrap this up, I want to just recap firstly everything that we just touched on in this session, which was meaning is the most important ingredient of lasting happiness. We said that there is satisfaction plus enjoyment plus meaning. And of those three, we want meaning the most to give us that lasting happiness. We have a bunch of different tools to help us find meaning. We can engage in acts of service. We can focus on meditation and mindfulness. We can ask deep philosophical questions, because each of those things is going to help us transcend. Transcend what? Transcend this I self versus me self concept. This thing that we've created about ourselves and us as the observer. We are able to transcend into the observer by using these techniques. And the science shows us that that helps us be happier. Why does it help us be happier? Because one of the greatest source, not even one of, like the source of our misery is the fact that we even know we exist, that we are even alive. And the fact that we know that is our superpower, but it is also the thing that means that when no other species complains about its existence, we do. So we need to know some tools of transcendence to help us gain all the benefits of this awareness that we have by adjusting the dials on the negative affects of that. So again, you are not your thoughts, your identity, or your mind. Your mind is a self-constructed identity, but we believe we are our thoughts. We believe we are whatever we've told ourselves, and we need to learn to transcend that. And finally, the different parts of happiness. Happiness is kind of an up and down journey. We kind of talked about this in the very first session, that the goal of this wasn't so much to pursue this idealistic sense of how do I get to this unattainable sense of being happy. We said in the very first session that what we're trying to do is pursue happiness, i.e., how do I be slightly happier today than I was yesterday? And how do I be slightly happier tomorrow than I was today? And that doesn't mean that it's going to be an incremental journey. Like Jenny talked about, our career paths kind of take different shapes. Our happiness journeys also take different shapes. There are days where we're going to be amazing, and there are days where we're going to feel terrible. But what we're trying to do is make sure that we're, on average, trending in the right direction and taking control of our journey, knowing the principles of happiness, knowing the science of happiness, not letting ourselves be one of the statistics that says, hey, I was really happy when I was 20 years old. Then I became miserable until I was 50. Then I found some meaning when I was 50, and then I became happier again. We want to be one of those people who said, I actually took control of my happiness when I was 10, when I was 20, when I was 30, when I was 40, whatever age you are. And from that point, I made sure I never got progressively, I might have had some down days, but I continuously kept working on my happiness. One of the most important things that we've talked about is that happiness has to come from within. And happiness, one of the most purest forms of happiness is love. Expressing love is such a powerful tool to connect you and bring you into a sense of presence. If you're wondering again, for joining late, why is this? Tune back into our first session. We talked about this in so much detail, but it is one of the most important things I kind of want to bring back as we bring this session. One more sort of overarching theme as we bring this three-part session to a close. We are so grateful for each of you who have joined us here on this session. I'll give to Jenny a second to share her thanks as well. But from my side, the most important thing that you could do in your own journey of happiness is commit to doing it every single day in some form, because that's what makes us happier. Not one incremental step change, but micro little commitments where we think about it, feel it, breathe it, surround ourselves with friends who also think about it, make our family talk about it over dinner. If you can be that parasite in your social group, I promise you, you're going to make yourself happier. Another part of this, within this journey, is the best way and the most selfish way that we have all been sharing our journey and working on ourselves is teaching it to people. And I keep coming back to that in every session because teaching is such a beautiful thing from so many reasons. One, it forces you to revisit, do you actually understand the thing that you think you understand? Because the best way to test if you do is try and tell it to somebody who doesn't believe a word of it. And if you can't explain it, it's not their fault. It's the fact that you don't understand it well enough. And that's a great opportunity for you to go back and actually go, how can I reaffirm my own knowledge? Don't use that as a great learning opportunity. But it's the purpose of teaching somebody else forces you to learn yourself. So if you make a commitment like we have that we're going to share this, we benefit ourselves from doing that. And it actually ties back into the last thing we talked about today, which is all of us at some point are going to have to make a transition from being high achiever at something to being a teacher of something. And I personally think being a teacher of happiness is one of the greatest things to continue to get joy from at any stage of your life. It is one of the things that will be there from if you're 9 years old, like one of our beautiful participants, or if you are 90 years old, you are always going to be an amazing, amazing teacher of happiness and continue to get joy from yourself. So I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who's joined us. This has been such a great privilege to share this with you all. And selfishly, it has been a great opportunity for me to revisit a lot of these concepts that I know I've been learning, teaching for 20 years, but just going back into it and going back to the most fundamental aspects has made me a lot happier in my own personal journey. Jenny?
Well, thank you so much for listening in to 3 very long sessions. But I truly appreciate the opportunity to share that with you. Thank you so much for asking questions, for engaging with the material, for hopefully not teaching it to someone else. And just remember, happiness is a continuous effort. It doesn't come on its own, no matter how successful you are. And treat it as the most important endeavor in your life. This has been such a delight to share these lessons with you in the most selfish way of really engaging with the material even more beyond the classroom and speaking about it. And it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be little steps every single day that will make such a big difference in your life. Thank you so much.
As we open up
Can you
our Q&A,
stop sharing? Can you stop sharing the screen so that we can see you guys better?
yes, I will pull that.
Yeah, that's better.
As we come to the end and before we put it to the Q&A, one thing I want to ask for anybody listening today and anybody who's listening to the recording, we would love to know what are the other topics that you'd be interested in hearing more from us. We're trying to figure out a cadence that may work and how we can come back and do other potential segments. But as we come to the end of the Science of Happiness, there are so many other areas that we've talked about and touched on that we would love to continue sharing with each of you. And as a personal kind of note, I truly believe that the world will be an amazing place if all these amazing masters here at the BYM Foundation and even people who are not part, just people who are focused on pursuing their own happiness, go out into the world and bring their own light into it. That is how we make the world a better place. It is, there is so much money you can donate. There is so much, resources and time that we have. But the greatest change that any of us can make is to help somebody become the best version of themselves and let that light just go into the world and just do its own thing. So for each of you here, as you be a happiness teacher, I am so deeply grateful to you and the role that you are playing in helping create another 1,000 little lights, maybe 10,000, 1,000,000 little lights that go out into each of that world. And whatever that happy soul does is only going to make the world a better, more amazing place to live in. So thank you again. We are deeply honored and deeply grateful for all of you who have been here in one or all of these sessions. Thank you so much. And we turn it over. Would love to hear any questions, any experience sharing, or anything else.
Yeah, I think I'll go first, Nikhil, and thank you, Gangadhar. First of all, I would like to thank all the hosting and the technical team for being part of such a great and profound session. I mean, words are going to be very scarce from my side because the words aren't coming out. I could just be here and give you both a big hug. That would really sum up what I mean. But first of all, Gangadhar, thank you so much. You're one of the most important pillars of BYM, and I so proudly say because all the great sessions are hosted by you. And again today, marvelously, you have hosted another great series. Rajni madam, every person, Nilima madam, who are technically hosting this session, my deep gratitude to you people. Because I don't want to thank them last, I wanted to thank them first. Without them, this session could not have been possible. Now, coming to the topic, yes, when you guys started, they've heard so much about happiness. I myself have given 200 sessions on happiness. But wow, this data, these topics that you have brought forward, we are so blessed that you could share the utmost wisdom in Harvard that you guys share with us. Gangadhar did mention we are so lucky that we are getting free of cost. BYM don't believe in paying because we don't believe in finance. We believe happiness is the biggest money, and I think that's why universe brought this topic to us. This is the most appropriate place that anyone can talk about happiness because each one of us, we believe in happiness and we live and breathe every minute of our lives to make it better, to make it happier. So on behalf of BYM Foundation, thank you very much, Jenny and Nikhil, besides your busy schedule to take out three hours, in fact, 9 to 10 hours. Honestly, you could have done this session in a 10 session series. The amount of data you guys have thrown on us, as people have been telling me, it's so much for them to take, though they are all very much in tune to what you're saying. But because these people have so much thirst for knowledge, you could have easily done this in 10 sessions, but I do realize your time pressures. We really appreciate. Couple of key takeaways from me and something that resonates with me is absolutely the I and me. I personally took a session on personal mind where I clearly talked about I, me, and that's what that makes my personal so important to come out of me into I. And I really loved the way you gave us examples of service. BYM believes in service. Every volunteer, every person in BYM is almost striving every minute to be involved in some kind of service. And you know what? The feedback they have given me, Madam, we are not doing it for you. We are doing it for ourselves. And right beside me, this lady who's sitting, Shailaja Sagi. And by the way, we are on Himalayan tours. And absolutely, we are in Nainital at the moment. And we are having a ball. I'm stuck here because I shouldn't say stuck here actually. Actually, we are due for our breakfast because we are about to go out. But I couldn't miss your session. And I'm sitting here listening, all ready to go. But we are having an amazing trip. Now, why did I talk about the trip? Because once you realize the purpose in life and you find that like-minded people who have the same purpose, your happiness amplifies. So you have covered everything. Just one bit that I would add is look for people who have same purpose in life, and your happiness will triple, your happiness will quadruple, because you mentioned in the slide one of the important ingredients of happiness is people too, and finding like-minded people with same purpose. I personal experience, this has multiplied our happiness. We have come to Mahavtar Babaji caves, and if I came alone, yes, I would have been happy. But you said people and memories. And this is the people and memories that have come into our lives. They're all getting ready. And these amazing people have brought people and memories into our Himalaya travels. One of the things that I wanted to really add, Nikhil and Jenny, is coming out of from the me mode to I mode. One of the biggest things we are finding is trying to be in awareness mode all the time. Be aware. Just don't be flowing away with the things that are thrown onto you in your life. Every time, step back and be aware. A conscious effort to pull yourself from me to I. And your data was amazing. There are a couple of charts which I myself struggled, but I'm going to go back again after I load your session on the YouTube, especially the scatter thing that you had. If I remember sitting at home and relentless search and that chart, I think I need to revisit. It's a very, very powerful chart. And I had so much in mind that I wanted to thank you for. But yeah, one of the most important thing is, why can't we just be happy by being what we are? Why we have to be doing all the time? So true, Nikhil. Everyone puts on music and we are always trying to do something. Why? The dog is happy doing nothing. So what's wrong with us? We were given an analytical mind to be creative and do things, not to land up in misery. And instead, what we have been doing is we are questioning our own existence because we're not happy with our existence. I don't know. So many things are takeaways for me. And you both are so young to me, but I know it's not about age. Finding happiness is a choice. You can choose happiness anytime you want. I choose my happiness, the real happiness, in 2002. But that was itself too late for me. And in BYM, children are finding happiness at the age of 5 because they chose. And I look back and think, I didn't get that opportunity, but that's all right. That was my soul plan. And I came in 2002. But Jenny and Nikhil, this has been the most amazing, amazing, amazing session. God bless you both. And I really wish for you, I know there's a lot of takeaways, but I really wish that you both remain happy and in happiness by at least applying 30% of that, because we will try to do the same. And my really blessings to you, because teaching is the best way to learn.
Yep.
And I'm so happy that today you're teaching. Today there may be only 40 or 50 on the Zoom, but once I upload on the YouTube, there'll be thousands watching this, and you will be touching thousands of lives. So this is what impacting human beings mean. And by teaching, we learn. I did not become a saint, or even now I'm not a saint, but I'm a happy person. I could give a testimony. Yes, I'm happy. Only little by little every day. Whatever I learned, I shared. And that's what made me happy. And God bless you, children. And I wish you do more of these sessions. Even if you do repeat of this in a little slower pace, by even taking 2 slides at a time, BYM will be happy to attend again and again and again. I'm not joking, because you guys really gave us so much knowledge. And anytime, Jenny and Nikhil, if you have time, please come back with 2 slides. We will be happy to hear for ours, because we are a bit slow, maybe because of our age. And we have a lot of questions we want to apply in our life. Um, so much has come to us that we are going back and forth, but amazing. I know once I load on the YouTube, I'm at fault. The last 2 sessions I could not upload on the YouTube because I'm traveling. But once I go back to Hyderabad, this is the first thing I'm going to do, upload on YouTube. I know I'm talking a lot. There are people who want to ask so many questions. But first of all, let me give a quick round for these
Hi,
guys to say
Nikhil.
thank you.
Hi, Jenny.
Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Love you. Madam, last
Thank you so-
చిన్న
Yeah,
experience.
tell them.
నేను తెలుగులో
Yeah, it's okay. Tell in Nikhil, one experience in Telugu they want to say after your session. Yeah, please go ahead.
I'll explain to Jenny.
Hi, Nikhil and Jenny. I'm Jwala, VM family. I have an experience in the last session. When I am in the train for this trip, I got an experience. Very, very, very joyful experience. That was the మీ సెషన్ జరుగుతున్నంతసేపు నేను ఎట్లా ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ చేశానంటే, ఆ జాయ్ అనేది నాకు మొత్తం రీల్ తిరుగుతుంది. నా మొత్తం లైఫ్ అంతా కూడా రీల్ తిరుగుతూ ఏదైతే ఇప్పుడు ఈ హ్యాపీనెస్ కోసం, జాయ్నెస్ కోసం ఏదైతే ఉందో అది నేను ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ చేసేసాను. చేస్తూ చేస్తూ ఎట్లా ఫీల్ అయ్యానంటే నేను 2 to 3 ఇన్కార్నేషన్స్ నేను ఫార్వర్డ్ అయిపోయాను. అంటే 3-4 అంటే నాకు ఎగ్జాక్ట్గా అలా 3-4 ఇన్కార్నేషన్స్ నేను దాటేశాను. అంటే ఐఎమ్ ఆల్రెడీ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్డ్ దట్. అంటే ఆ ఎనర్జీ అట్లా ఉందన్నమాట. ఆ సెషన్ మీ సెషన్ వింటూ ఉన్నప్పుడు ఒక 5 minutesలో నాకు జరిగిన ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ అది. వెరీ వెరీ గ్రేట్ఫుల్ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్, వండర్ఫుల్ ఎనర్జీ.
ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్.
థ్యాంక్
చాలా
యూ.
సంతోషం కాదు.
ఎస్ నిఖిల్, థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్. వీఆర్ బ్లెస్డ్. వీఆర్
నాన్న ఇంకెవరైనా షేర్
ఫ్యామిలీ. We all are one. Jenny, love you so much.
విజయలక్ష్మి మేడం.
Thank you.
Thank you.
లవ్ యూ చాలా హ్యాపీ అనిపిస్తాను. మీ ఇద్దరు చాలా చాలా బాగా. థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Thank you, Amma.
Gupta sir.
Hello, very good morning, Nikhil Master and Jani Madam.
Namaste, sir.
Very happy to see you, first of all.
Thank you,
Both
sir.
of we are in Nainital already, Madam told to you, and
Yes.
explained this happiness session in a very, very excellent manner. You have given so many examples at the same time with the scientific manner. That is the most important. So many people will tell different types of happiness, but you have given the examples with scientific, with data. That is the most important thing. When people will accept it, when you show that in different types of this thing, you have given examples as well as the data. That is most important thing. We have enjoyed the session, and it is very good session. We have given very knowledgeable. And thank you so much for both of you.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Namaste, Amma.
నమస్తే. చాలా బాగుంది. కాకపోతే నాకు ఇంగ్లీష్ కొంచెమే తెలుసు. ఈయన దాన్ని ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తున్నారు. మీరు చెప్పిన తర్వాత మళ్ళీ ఆ సెక్షన్ని నాకు తెలుగులో ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తున్నారు. థ్యాంక్ యూ. చాలా బాగుంది.
చాలా సంతోషంగా.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. మీరు 66
Hello.
మీరు 66 years తర్వాత హ్యాపీనెస్ గురించి కూడా చెప్పినప్పుడు అంతా ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ చేస్తున్నారు అనమాట నాకు పక్క నుంచి. థ్యాంక్ యూ. చాలా బాగుంది మాస్టర్.
చాలా సంతోషంగా ఉంది.
అంటే నేను ఇలా సెల్లు అక్కడ లోపల మీది స్టార్ట్ అయిన తర్వాత పట్టుకున్నప్పుడు నాకు మీ దగ్గర నుంచి నాకు ఎనర్జీస్ పాస్ అవుతున్నాయి మాస్టర్స్. అంటే నాకు ఏమో తెలీదు, మొత్తం షివరింగ్ ఎనర్జీస్ నేను తీసుకుంటున్నాను అనేది నాకు తెలిసిపోతుంది మాస్టర్. థ్యాంక్ యూ. మీ ఎనర్జీస్ అంతా నేను తీసుకున్నాను. థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Hello, Nikhil. I am Sailaja Sagi here. I'm so happy to meet both of you today. Love you both so much. I'm so happy to see you both now. I'm very happy, Nikhil. I'll be seeing your sessions. I'll be going through your sessions, which comes in BYM platform. I really, really love the session so much. And this coming to this happiness, the amount of information, the deepen the subject you give, I liked it so much, Nikhil. Thank you so much. I can't tell more words
you so
more
much.
than this. Jenny, love you so much,
Thank
Amma.
you so much.
So that's the love. This is how we BYM masters are. Anything goes in, we can't contain. Vijayalakshmi madam is actually crying. That is crying out the tears of happiness.
Happiness.
When we can't explain, that's what we do. She's so happy. So this is from all the Himalayan masters. We call ourselves Himalayan masters now. Just one trip is enough, right? And Venkat also says hello to everybody. So bye from Himalayan masters to all the people, and I'll give chance to others. But Jenny, you have to take upon yourself this commitment that you have to show up every now and then to give us these profound sessions. I'm not giving this responsibility to Nikhil. I'm giving it to you because I know it will happen. And Jenny, you don't know how much thirst of knowledge we have. Don't think what you have given is small. It's immense for us. We are thriving. And please do it again and again. This is my humble request. God bless you both. Gangadhar, sorry we have taken so much time. Nana, you can give it to somebody else now.
Thank you so much. No, thank you.
Swapna?
Hi. Oh, I think there's some background. Okay. Hey, I'm Swapna from Austin, Texas, US. Wonderful session. And, there are many key takeaways. And for me, it was more like kind of a reminder. I missed the first two sessions, and thanks for giving the recap. The best part was wherein you were talking about trying to experience those moments of boredom. That was like an eye opener. And another one was like the detox that we need to do because of the gadgets. I mean, with the social media and other things. Though we know that, and how beautifully you mentioned that initially, like when there were no phones or anything, the comparison was just with people in the physical vicinity. That's so true, actually. And now you have you have access to so many people, so many various forms of art or whatever you think you see, right? And so, and I mean, I can talk about my generation. So the current generation has more opportunities than us. So when we look at all these things, somewhere we have that feeling that maybe we could have done something. And thank you for pointing out that it's important that we are trying to not give too much importance to what we are doing, but I mean in terms of the process of asking questions as to what you want to do itself is also very important, and that opens up that quotient of happiness within us. That's amazing. So the topic that you are asking, Nikhil, what you want us you to touch upon, I would say about the observer and observing. I think it's quantum physics topic that you are trying to tell. So if you can take a session on that, that will be really helpful.
Thank you so much for sharing. When we did this session, that topic is one of my favorite topics. It's a topic that I could talk about for a 3-day workshop and still not cover it. So I was like, we'll tease it and we'll give you a little bit in today's session. And thank you so much for reinforcing that. So would love to come back and do that.
I would say simplified version of the, sorry to interrupt you. I would say
ahead.
simplified version, because we keep hearing a lot about it from many people.
Yes.
They also talk about the experiment wherein, that the electron was observed and so many things. But it's more around like for everybody, when sometimes people ask me about it, it's very hard to explain. So if you could simplify the topic to, so that everybody at all levels can understand, that will be really great.
Definitely. I think it is one of the most powerful aspects as well, that once you start wrapping your head around this, it is such a powerful metacognitive tool and spiritual tool to help you see the world in a way that's more aligned. And just to touch on what you said, I'm so glad the point on the questioning resonated with you. And the reason we reinforce that a lot is in this generation and the younger generation, people stopped asking questions at all because the response is, I don't believe there's an answer, or I don't think I can even find an answer. So it's the whole thing of it's too hard, or so I'm not going to try. And people forget that the effort itself is 90%, I would say 99% of the benefit, maybe even 100. And it's the asking of itself and a lot of this that we're talking about, we have such a wide age group here, but I was really thinking of, I know where everybody's struggles is, how do I deal with the skeptic within me, and how do I deal with the skeptic within my friends group or family or whatever it is, who I want to be able to help. And I'm so glad that resonated with you.
Absolutely. Curiosity, basically. That's the most important thing. Yeah.
Exactly right.
And thanks for touch basing on so many topics today. I felt you've covered a lot of sections. It's not just one particular topic, but everything, was like a reminder for me. So,
I'm so glad.
Definitely in terms of digital detox and quantum physics is something that we are looking forward to hearing more on.
Definitely. And please go back and see the other two sessions as well, and
Yes,
put a lot of
I'm
that
going
back
to do that.
into perspective.
Okay,
Thank
sure.
you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You
Thank you,
too.
Jenny.
Thank you.
Iti, our favorite participant of all our sessions, we have to say. We're so glad that you guys are here every session. We love both of you guys engaging with us.
Yeah, we're just so grateful. I just don't want to reiterate everything, Nikhil and Jenny. It's just that we've teared up quite a bit today, listening to the session, and just deepest gratitude to Saroja ma'am too. We've never got a chance to like be like other BYM members. We are just these silent spectators that watch every single video on YouTube of hers. I mean, yeah. So there's so many takeaways from today's session. We've made so much notes. Nitya has been scribbling a lot during the session too. The main things like, I mean, the last session with the past 1 week, the one thing that kept resonating in our mind was like being special or being happy. Now we're going to take away with happiness is love, and that's going to resonate in our heads for quite a long time now. And the other thing is that I mean, we also like the me self and I self. We've heard Saroja ma'am talk a lot about it, so thank you so much for that. And also about using our left brain quite often is very like we do that quite often. And I mean, scrolling through the phone and an hour has gone just like that in a, and that 1 hour that's never going to come back in my life again. So trying to detox, we're constantly working on that. So we have this joke. I just want to wind up my talking here with just one little joke that we have in our household. So like whenever Nitya says, "Mom, I'm bored," I just say, "Oh, hi, bored. How you doing?" It's a joke from a cartoon Bluey. So that's one thing. So there's no we don't take bored seriously. It's just lying down in the grass and looking into the sky like abyss that you talked about. Those are the things that we're trying to incorporate in our lives. Just doing nothing is also very important. And thanks again, Nikhil and Jenny. You're just pouring in so much information that we just have to keep going on and on. And I mean, listening to this as many times as we could. And Nitya will quickly talk something. I'm
Please,
sorry.
please. No, take your time.
I was really happy about this session because I'm very thankful. I can tell that you guys worked really hard for like going through
Thank you so
and like
much.
researching, and it's really cool of how you got those, like how you made the slides, and how uh I also think that meaning, enjoyment, and satisfaction, also happiness and love. I really liked it because um, we got to actually understand. And also, I was really happy that we were talking about the signs of happiness, because it's one of the main topics of Dharma, and it's really cool how we brought that topic.
Yeah. We look
I
forward to
love
sharing this wisdom with her friends also at school as much as we could. Thank you
Thank you so
again.
much, Nithya, as well. We're so excited to watch your journey, particularly. The older people we're less interested in because, as we showed you on that curve, they're kind of stuck in their ways, and what they learn, they'll learn. But we're so excited for your journey in particular. And on behalf of the BYM platform, you said you guys are a bit more silent. There's no right or wrong way to participate in the platform, but we do so much, particularly with children, and we would love for you, if there's anything that you want to share, we would love to give you a platform when you're
Yes.
comfortable and when you're ready to
Yeah.
share it with so many other people, because you've grasped more of what we're talking about than many of the adults even listening today. So please reach out if that's something you would like to do. And Deepti, please, if that's
Yeah.
something that you think would be great for your daughter,
We
we'd
will,
love to
yeah.
help do that.
Yeah. No doubt about it. It's gonna be really, I mean, yeah, she would love to share her knowledge. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Amazing.
so
Thank you
much.
so much both for joining us. And
Thank
if you're in Boston or New York at some point, please let us know. We'd love to catch up.
Would love to. Thank you.
Sushma? Hi, how are you?
Hi, Masters. Hi, Jenny ma'am, and hi, Nikhil sir. Very happy to see you both. And wholeful gratitude from all the masters who are unable to say, talk on behalf of all of them. I'm saying it's such a beautiful class, sir. We learn many things, even though we know we drop frequently. Because of both of you, we were knowing many more points. Even the same point, it's in a different angle. And thank you both of you, masters. The service what you told, really, even though we feel we are waste masters, I'm truly saying, why were we and what are we? Due to BYM only, we feel that, oh, we are also worthful. Okay, we can also do something. And
Yeah.
thank both of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing. Thanks. And I really, really appreciate you bringing out the whole aspect of service. In this session, I think outside of the I self, me self, that's my favorite bit. And it resonates so much with what everybody in the BYM Foundation here is all about. And it's such a powerful concept that the gift of giving is empowering to everybody, especially if you feel you don't have power, you feel you're worthless. The greatest thing you can do is serve to find your own sense of self-worth. Thank you so much for sharing. Together, is there any other raised hands? Just wanted to check.
think there are no one else. Yeah. I
Perfect.
think then you will close the session. Thank you so much, Nikhil sir and Jenny ma'am. Really, so it was a feast of 3 sessions really for us. Yeah, it was like shower of knowledge on happiness. There's so many points to take away. I think we need to go, as Saroja ma'am told, we need to go through these sessions once they are uploaded so that we get the gist of it and put it in practice. Yeah, there's lots of work to do. I think the work you have done the bit, but I think we have to do a lot by digging into it and preparing all the things which we need to practice for happiness. Really, the way you presented it both, it was really good. Like the way you explained, Nikhil sir, and how Jenny ma'am was putting the stats to it, and whenever some points, you both complimented each other like just yin and yang. Really, it was a feast to watch to both of you presenting this topic. What a great way to introduce Jenny ma'am to our platform. Yeah, we this was a way I think formally to get into our BYM family. Really great. It's wonderful. And the main point which stuck with in today's session was the oxytocin. They really had this loads of oxytocin, particularly with these sessions, hosting with these sessions, and that's how we just fill ourselves with oxytocin in BYM platform itself. And this particular point has been recurring in many sessions. Like one of the neuroscientists came in and tell the same thing about the mother's love and how we get it even through the service which we do. We just experience that through oxytocin, and that's again it was reinstated in this today's session. Wonderful session. Thank you so much. Hearty gratitude from all of the BYM members, and we are looking forward for many sessions in future. Yeah,
Thank you so
particularly.
much, Gangadhar. And honestly, I just wanted to say thank you again for your help in coordinating, sharing this with everybody. To everybody listening, none of this would have been possible without the help of all the volunteers. And Gangadhar, I'm particularly happy that you weren't only able to introduce Jenny to the platform here, but also in Melbourne, you were
Yeah.
the person who actually introduced Jenny to the broader BYM community there
I
as
am
well.
so
So
humble for this opportunity. Really, it was not me who was supposed to do it, but yeah, universe wanted me. Look like I felt like that way. Yeah, it always worked that way. Really great. And also, I just wanted to tell about that. I gave this challenge to one of my friend that okay, we are doing so much of things. You do multitasking and all. Just sit doing nothing. Then he was struggling with that challenge. He told it's very difficult, and then one of the point which we got is let's do that. It's like the useless friends. There's like useless time we need to spend by sitting on ourselves because we have put so much of garbage, like how Michael Singer says we are unable to sit with ourselves, and we're just deviating ourselves by doing a lot of work, like how Jenny ma'am, I think we're doing so many home chores, anything, something to deviate ourselves from not going within ourselves. No one want to do meditation because they can't sit with themselves because there's so many thoughts that are distracting them. They can't be with our thoughts. But really, we are fortunate that we are in this path and we are able to connect with ourselves. Really great, great. Thank you so much. There's one participant who raised hand. Do you want to talk?
Gayatri Devi, please.
Right, yeah.
యా హాయ్ మాస్టర్స్. నేను తెలుగులో మాట్లాడతాను. నా పేరు గాయత్రి అండి, న్యూయార్క్ నుంచి. నేను జస్ట్ ఇప్పుడే చూసాను అది. సారీ అబౌట్ దట్. చాలా అద్భుతంగా అనిపించింది. నాకు కొంచెం తక్కువ అర్థమవుతుంది ఇంగ్లీష్, అయినా కూడా చాలా బాగుంది. ఇట్స్
Thank you.
అమేజింగ్ సెషన్. మీ ఇద్దరికి కంగ్రాట్స్ చెప్పడానికి ఒకటి. అందులో సరోజ మ్యామ్ని నేను ఎప్పుడు ఫాలో అవుతూ ఉంటాను. ఆన్ సెషన్ కాకపోయినా కూడా ఆఫ్, నేను ప్రతిదీ చూస్తూ ఉంటాను. ఇట్స్ అమేజింగ్ మాస్టర్స్. అందరూ కూడా, ప్రతి ఒక్కరూ కూడా మనకిప్పుడు మామూలుగా పత్రిజీ గారంటే అందరూ ఒక్కొక్క పత్రిజీ అన్నట్టుగా సరోజ మ్యామ్ గ్రూప్‌లో కూడా ఒక్కొక్క సరోజ మ్యామ్ అందరూ కూడా. ప్రతి ఒక్కళ్ళు సరోజ అనమాట. అంత అద్భుతమైన సెషన్‌లు ఇస్తూ ఉంటారు. గంగాధర్ గారు తెలుసు, నీలిమ మేడం అందరూ తెలుసు, సరిత గారు. ఇట్స్ అమేజింగ్ వర్క్. ప్రతి ఒక్కళ్ళు కూడా టీమ్ అని కాదు, ఇట్స్ మిషనరీ అన్నట్టుగా చేస్తారు వర్క్. హ్యాట్స్ ఆఫ్ టు యూ ఆల్ పీపుల్ అందరికీ కూడా. థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్. నేను మళ్ళీ ఈ పాత సెషన్స్ కూడా, అంటే మీరు ఇంతకుముందు ఇచ్చిన ఆ 2 సెషన్స్ కూడా నేను వింటాను. ఇది కూడా నేను ఫస్ట్ నుంచి వింటాను. థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్.
Thank you
థ్యాంక్ యూ
so
అండి,
much.
నాకు ఈ అవకాశం ఇచ్చినందుకు.
Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah.
And thank you again to everybody who also wished us and shared their gratitude in the comments. We really appreciate everybody who's participated. And I think with that brings a close to this segment and the 3-part series on the science of happiness. We're so glad you could all join us, and we look forward. It's bye for now, but we'll reconnect with you very soon in the near future on some other amazing topic. So. Good night, good morning, depending on where you are in the world, or good day.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.